I'm Anil Kumar, and in this video I'm discussing a very important point of view. Normally in trigonometry we start with the height distance application questions, and most of the questions are related in which we are finding height and distance using tan ratio, right? So the whole chapter which you did previously was based on finding solution to the problem using tan ratio. Now the question is when to use sine or cosine ratio, or if we have height and distance question, do we always use tan ratio? You can ask that kind of a question also, right? So this is the case which we are dealing with now. Now a simple solution to this is that most of the time when we have involved both height and distance with angle of elevation or angle of depression, in that case we should use tan ratio, right? But sometimes what happens is we are also involving hypotenuse, right? In a right triangle, whenever you involve hypotenuse, then sine and cosine come into picture, right? So let's take two examples here and we'll see how. So the key which answers this question is hypotenuse. If hypotenuse is involved, then sine and cosine will be used, otherwise tan, right? As you know, SOHCAHTOA is another way of looking into it. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse, cosine is adjacent over hypotenuse, and tan is opposite over adjacent. So if hypotenuse is not involved, then tan ratio will be involved. That is what it is, right? So we have two examples here in which we'll not be using the tan ratio, but we'll be using the sine and cosine. So they will help you to appreciate when to use which ratio. We have already done a couple of examples where tan ratio was used, right? So let's go through the first one. It says, Peter is flying a kite on a string 500 meters long. Determine the height of the kite if the string is at an angle of 40 degrees with the ground, right? So basically, string is given to us which is 500 meter long. That means kind of hypotenuse is given to us. Do you see that? Now it says 40 degrees with the ground. That means ground will be horizontal, right? And height is going to be vertical. So what we have involved here is basically hypotenuse of a right triangle. So this one is a right triangle here, correct? And we know 500 meters is the length of the string. Angle given to us is 40 degrees, which is with the ground, right? Says determine the height of the, so we need to find the height. Since we want side opposite to 40 and we are given the hypotenuse, opposite and hypotenuse, we have to use sine. Do you understand? So for such a question, we'll say sine of 40 degrees is equals to height over 500, and therefore height should be equal to 500 times sine of 40 degrees. Do you get it? And then we can use calculator, find the answer, right? So 500 times sine of 40 degrees. That gives us 321.39. So we'll write 321.39 could be written as 4 meters, right? So that is how we can say the height will be 321.4 meters or just 321 meters. Okay. Now the next question here is, a 10-meter ladder leans against the wall. So now let us say there is a wall here, right? Now a ladder is leaning against the wall. So there is a ground, correct? So let's now make a ladder. It is leaning means kind of like this, right? A 10-meter ladder, it says. So 10 meters means what? Length of the ladder itself. So again, we have involved the hypotenuse. Do you see that? That is the right triangle for us. 10-meter ladder. Length of the ladder is given to us. It makes an angle of 70 degrees with the ground. Find the distance from the foot. So we have to find this distance. So that becomes the adjacent side, correct? So it is adjacent side. So adjacent side and hypotenuse means cosine. So we'll say, well, now it will be cos of 70 degrees is equals to adjacent side, let me write adjacent itself, divided by 10. And therefore this side, adjacent side, will be how much? Will be 10 times cos of 70 degrees. You get the idea, right? So these are the cases where we will be using sine or cosine, right? 10 times cos of 70 degrees. That gives us 3.42 meters, right? Since the units are meter, or 342 centimeters, correct? Or which could be sometimes 342 centimeters, right? At times we'll ask you how many centimeters distance it is from the foot of the wall, right? So that is how we have to do. So remember one thing, if hypotenuse is involved, in that case we cannot use tan, we should not use tan, okay? We should use sine or cosine depending on which is the other side. Is it adjacent or or the opposite side, right? So in distance and height questions also, you will be using sine or cosine ratios at times, right? So if it is only height and distance, normally they will be the sides, not the hypotenuse, correct? So normally it is tan ratio, right? But there are so many examples which we are now going to explore where it is kind of open now for you. You could use sine ratio, cosine ratio, or tan ratio. You have to work on what is given to you, right? Based on that, apply the correct ratio to get the right answer. I hope that helps. Thank you.